What is good, everybody? Jigan back with another One Piece discussion video. Today, we will be predicting the bounties for the Straw Hat Pirates and the Supernovas involved on Wano Kuni. Bounties have always been one of my favorite concepts in manga. The idea that our main protagonists are technically criminals, that the world government assigns a value on their head that determines the threat level they possess. Oda always does such an amazing job with these reveals. He makes them feel so earned, so rewarding for our favorite characters. I figured this would be a great time to drop a video like this because the raid on Onigashima is starting to heat up, meaning individual fights in big events will be happening very soon. And of course, we all know when it comes to bounties, who you fight and what you accomplish are often a primary factor as to how much of an increase you'll get. Now that we finally know the bounties for the actual Yonko and even Whitebeard and Roger themselves, it's a lot easier to envision the endgame. We can use that to gauge where our protagonists will end up at the end of the series. I'm probably in the minority belief that Wano will be the second last bounty checkpoint of the series. Oda did say that when Wano is over, the ending will be in sight for One Piece, and we know that there always isn't a bounty increase after every single arc, so it's very possible we won't see an increase for an arc like Elbaf, or maybe anything in between Raftel or the Final War. I do admit my line of thinking could be off on this, but if my numbers seem a bit too high, then just remember that I am going into this video with the mindset of Wano being the second last bounty increase. So without further ado, let's dive into what these characters may potentially accomplish, and what will be considered a worthy threat level for them at the end of Wano. So I'm going to start this video with X Drake because I think his circumstances are probably the most unique out of anybody that's here. He's the captain of the Marine Special Secret unit called SWORD. We know he and his crew are affiliated with the Beast Pirates and that he serves as one of the Toby Roppo. But what exactly will be his approach in this raid? Will he continue his act as a Beast Pirate and fight with everything he has against the Alliance? Or will he lay lower, in the shadows, watching from the sidelines as chaos transpires? Regardless, I do eventually see him turning on Kaido in this arc, if the odds start to favor the Alliance. Wano is a supernova-driven arc, so I fully expect him to partake in this battle. If the opportunity presents itself, I think he would team up with his supernova counterparts, if it meant taking out a larger threat like Kaido. But will the Marines increase his bounty after this, and keep this fake pirate persona going? I think they most likely would try, but I find it very unlikely that his true position stays a secret. He's likely to be found out at some point in this arc, or maybe he purposely even reveals himself. Who knows? But even though X Drake will play a massive role, my prediction is that he returns to a regular position in the Marines after Wano, and that his bounty will be 0. The Navigator of the Straw Hat Pirates, Nami. I don't see her role being too big in this arc, but I think it'd be really funny if she was somehow able to finesse Prometheus. I think that'd be hilarious, as well as make her pretty hacks as a combatant. Maybe even giving her the opportunity to face off against somebody strong like one of the Numbers, or maybe even a team up against the Flying Six. But as of right now, I'm not sure she'll get a one-on-one fight. I see her likely playing a lot of support, with many ranged attacks, and of course, using that heavily sharp intellect to help out the Alliance. Nami's bounty usually is amongst the lowest in the Straw Hat crew, and I think that trend continues. But I think she gets a 200 million increase for a total bounty of 266 million. The Soul King himself, Brook. With the amount of shine he receives in Whole Cake Island, I kind of expect Brook to take a little bit of back seat here. But regardless, for Brook, I think it'd be a wasted opportunity if he didn't get at least another matchup with another swordsman. Perhaps the guy from the Mimawara Gumi. But I also think he could potentially play a role with Carrot in the defeat of Pero Sparrow, who we know is right around the corner of Onigashima. In Whole Cake Island, Brook and Pedro were kind of like partners. They developed that brotherhood. So I think it'd be cool if he could play some sort of role in his downfall. I'm thinking Soul King gets a pretty solid raise to 383 million. Next is Cyborg Frankie, and I think he's another one where his role won't exactly be massive, but he'll likely have a lot of cool moments. We already see him bringing out the tanks for the other Straw Hats to use, and he also mentioned he developed some anti-Kaido weapons, so hopefully we get to see General Frankie in action once again at some point, maybe against one of the Numbers, or perhaps another fight like Senor Pink, where he slugged it out in close combat. Regardless, Frankie is a Straw Hat, and everyone's notoriety will be big at the end of Wano. I see Frankie having a bounty around 433 million. Next we have Chopper, And not gonna lie, I think Chopper is going off this arc. I think he will be the Brook of Whole Cake Island, the Straw Hat who gets that complementary focus to whoever's arc it actually is. And I think that is Zoro. Just like how Brook got that secondary focus to Sanji in Whole Cake Island. As you all know, we are in a country with a lot of Zoan users. It's the perfect time to showcase Chopper's combat ability, which we haven't seen in a 1v1 situation for quite a while. His importance as a doctor will also be massive going forward. It's an enemy organization with so many chemical weapons. And of course we have the Smiley plotline, which I definitely think will be his job to solve. Wano will be the arc where Chopper's gag finally ends. Our boy is finally getting a real bounty. I think Chopper goes up to 500 million. God Usopp, Sogeking. What will be the name on this Wano poster? Well, we all know Usopp is going to pull off a clutch snipe like he did at Enies Lobby and Dressrosa. I think we see him engage in combat from a distance, supporting the likes of Chopper and Frankie. But I swear to you, at some point, we all know it's coming, Usopp is going to hilariously find the spotlight and do something crazy. And this will result in Usopp getting a bounty of 600 million. Knight of the Sea Jinbei, the newest member of the crew, the Straw Hats veteran, is finally here. And he's in his first campaign, so I don't expect him to disappoint. A lot of people speculate he could fight against Jack, but I honestly don't see it. In my opinion, a more suitable matchup for him would be Sasaki of the Flying Six. And I also see him contributing in the fight against Big Mom given their history. The way Jinbei just conveniently pulled up out of nowhere, with no scars, or what seemed to be no real consequences from Whole Cake Island. This makes me think he's hiding something. Hiding something so morale doesn't lower before the war. So if and when the full context of what happened is revealed, it could add a lot more emotional weight to the fight. As far as bounty goes, the only thing that's going against him is the fact that he's already a well-established figure in the world of One Piece. Which means the threat level he possesses is already pretty accurate. But joining the Straw Hats will easily give this man a solid increase regardless. So I'm going to go with 738 million for Jinbei. So next we have Nico Robin, and there's always been a lot of speculation about what Robin's bounty will actually be after Wano. A lot of people think it's going to skyrocket due to them likely having 3 of the 4 road poneglyphs. And I do agree to some extent. I just don't see her bounty going over 1 billion like some people have suggested. As far as combat involvement goes, I see mostly a support-like role for Robin, just like the lower Straw Hats. But I'd honestly love if she had an assassination-like plot, the way her character used to be in the past. During the early stages of Wano, she was tasked with getting close to Orochi to gather intel. So I'd be really excited if she could contribute to his downfall somehow. I think a reasonable number for Robin post-Wano is 830 million. Next we have Sanji. Now, I definitely expect Sanji to have a bigger role than the other Straw Hats mentioned before. But of course, the main question that people have been asking since the beginning of the arc is, will Sanji get a commander fight? At this point it's hard to say. Queen definitely fits the characteristics for somebody he could fight, but some people don't think he's quite strong enough to do so. Plus, the better narrative arguably goes to Kid, which I'll elaborate on later. Jack is another possibility for sure, as well as some of the Flying Six members, but I think above all else, he'll maximize his new abilities from the raid suit to undergo a solo stealth mission, which might end up being one of the most clutch moments of the entire war, kinda like when he opened the Gates of Justice at Enies Lobby. I also think, given his history on Whole Cake Island, that it'd be really cool if he stuck to the Big Mom side of the plot throughout this raid. Maybe even fighting against Perospero, who we know killed Pedro. But at the end of the day, Sanji will definitely get the biggest increase amongst the Straw Hats not named Luffy and Zoro. So I expect it to be either 2 numbers. If he does defeat Queen, it's likely to be 1.3 billion, which is what Queen's bounty is right now. But my honest guess is that he gets a fairly easy rematch with Page 1, and maybe even another clash against X Drake. There's oftentimes a comedic aspect to Sanji's Wano posters, so my prediction is that Oda gives Sanji a bounty of 997 million. Next, it's time to talk about the Supernovas, the 11 rookie pirates who all gathered on Sabaody Archipelago together with bounties over 100 million. Most of the Supernovas have been making big moves in the New World, whether that's working under a Yonko or challenging the Yonko like Kid and Luffy. So I think in the arc where most of the Supernova are gathered, and most of their respective plot lines seem to be coming together, that they will all make a name for themselves. I think just like how Sabaody signified in Up and Coming Generation, that Wano will now signify the emergence of their generation as big players. That they aren't just rookies anymore, but that their time is now. They arrived on Sabaody, all worth more than 100 million, and now they will leave the Wano Arc, all worth more than $1 billion. So before I get into the exact numbers, I think it's very possible that the supernovas that aren't here, like Bonnie, Mad Monk, and Capone, will get major increases as well. But for the sake of the video, I'm just going to be predicting the ones that are present here in Wano. So starting off, we got Murder Machine Killer, the combatants and most likely first mate of the Kid Pirates. He's definitely somebody I'm eager to see go off. This man, along with his captain, have been going through straight hell ever since their encounter with Kaido. He even was forced to eat a smiley fruit for the opportunity to save his captain, in which he served Orochi as an assassin under the name Kamazo the Manslayer. We got to see him fight against Zoro back in Act 2 a bit, in which he was ultimately defeated. But personally, I don't think that this was fully indicative of Killer's true strength. I don't think the Kid Pirates necessarily have to match their Straw Hat counterparts, but I think it's closer than what people think and what was displayed. Killer is one of the 4 supernova currently who have been spotted fighting on the front lines in Onigashima, and I definitely think that will continue. But I think it's crucial for Killer to prove himself in a 1v1 fight, maybe against a swordsman like Who's Who, or even Jack the Calamity, who has a similar scythe fighting style to himself. He'll also play a role in the takedown of Kaido or Big Mom. So I think when it's all said and done, the right-hand man of Eustace Kid warrants a bounty of $1.2 billion. Next we got the magician Basil Hawkins. Last time we saw Hawkins, it didn't look like he was having a good time, so I don't know how or when he's going to be involved in this battle. But I definitely expect him and every other supernova to jump into the Kaido fight. After Hawkins and Law fought, there appeared to be a mysterious figure lurking who allowed Law to escape. Some people have speculated it to be Drake because just after this it was actually revealed he was in Sword. So maybe there's already a plan being built up where Drake is scheming. Maybe Hawkins' only chance of survival is to cooperate. There's a lot of ways Oda could go about this, but he'll likely side with the other supernovas against Kaido at some point. Maybe whenever his fortune telling dictates, it will be in their favor. I see Hawkins' bounty after Wano being $1.32 billion. I'm pretty much using the same logic for Apu, who was recently fighting with Kid over the events of what happened in their previous alliance. But he even states himself that pirate alliances never end up well, and that facing the Yonko is impossible. Could this be foreshadowing that Apu will actually agree to team up with them and take down Kaido? He is an opportunist, so I think he would strike if favorable circumstances came his way. Him, along with Hawkins and Law, have very tricky fighting styles, unique Devil Fruit abilities that could complement the close combat style of Zoro, Kid, Luffy, and Killer very well. I see Apu's bounty being $1.35 billion after Wano. Next is Trafalgar D. Watcher Law. Now we're getting to the real good stuff of this video. I consider Law to be one of the 4 most prominent members of this alliance, whose involvement takes us all the way back to Punk Hazard, where he originally proposed this alliance with Luffy in order to take down Kaido. Obviously, the original proposition was slightly misleading due to Law's personal grudge against Doflamingo, but nonetheless, post-Dressrosa Law has been very dedicated to this alliance, and we all know what Law does best, and that's use his mind. Strategizing, coming up with schemes that give them the highest possible success rate. When the raid on Onigashima began, Law's the one who stepped up and made changes to Kinemon's plan, by taking into account factors such as the 2 idiots who will charge forth no matter what, and utilizing his submarine to attack from the back in order to effectively pincer Orochi and Kaido. Obviously his role as a doctor will be huge as well, with the alliance being at a major numbers disadvantage. Him, alongside Marco and Chopper, will be relied on heavily to keep as many men healthy as possible. It doesn't stop there for Law though, because individually he's also one of the strongest combatants we have. I could definitely see him taking on someone like Jack or Who's Who before the inevitable Kaido confrontation. In my opinion, he might take whichever one Killer does not take. But even if he doesn't get a matchup with a Calamity, we all know he'll be a major player against Kaido, and possibly even Big Mom. Kaido himself has a pretty big grudge against Law, explicitly stating him by name as a ringleader who destroyed his business back in Dressrosa. Law will be front and center in the fight against the 2 Yonko, offering his support, strength, and tactics. Now, a common theory in the One Piece community is that Law will in fact die in this arc, which I actually used to believe myself, but honestly, I'm not so sure anymore. I think there's a very good chance Law's purpose goes beyond the Wano Arc, and I was actually convinced of this by my guy Malik, who has a fantastic thread on Twitter supporting this, so I highly advise you check it out if you're interested. The link will be in the description. But to sum it up, the Will of D is one of the biggest mysteries we have in One Piece. It's something very prominent in Law's backstory, probably more so than anybody else in the series thus far. Even though his goal of revenge against Doflamingo is complete, Law will pursue the mystery of the will of D. He will be free, like Corazon wanted him to be. Of course, being free could mean a number of things. The Opie Opie no Mi at the cost of the user's life is able to grant somebody else eternal youth. So some have speculated you may even be able to bring somebody back from the dead with it. Some have speculated Law will use this technique to revive Luffy at some point in the arc, at the cost of his own life. Perhaps he entrusts Luffy with his dream and dies smiling the way so many of the D clan have. But in my opinion, Law's journey does not end in Wano, and I think he leaves this arc as one of the biggest threats on the sea. His bounty after Wano will be 1,750,000,000. Eustace Captain Kidd, somebody who the One Piece community has been waiting for a long time to see in action. The Supernova who pre-time skip had the highest bounty amongst all of them, but in the post-time skip things haven't been exactly going his way. He's been challenging Yonko but not succeeding. He got his arm cut off against Red Hair, betrayed by Apu and the Alliance, and then imprisoned by Kaido. The only somewhat success he's had is injuring an unnamed Sweet Commander and then getting what he said he came for, which I assume meaning the Poneglyph. But to sum it up, Kid has been failing where Luffy has been succeeding. Similar ambition, but morally questionable and without plot armor. So now that Kid is finally involved in a major arc, I expect his role to be massive and to rack up many accomplishments. We will finally get on-screen feats, and might even have to see him cooperate with Luffy if it means taking down the Yonko. I don't necessarily think he's obligated to be Luffy's direct equal in strength like some people believe, but I definitely expect him to be formidable and comparable to him overall. I expect Kid to show out against a commander like Queen, who we know tortured him in the Udon prison. He obviously holds a massive grudge against Kaido too, so I expect him to play a massive role in the downfall of him, and possibly even Big Mom too, if the opportunity presents itself. He'll continue to be a frontrunner in the worst generation after Wano, and he'll leave the arc with a bounty of 1,970,000,000. So only 2 characters remain now, and it should be obvious who they are. Monkey D. Luffy and Roronoa Zoro. Luffy is our main protagonist, so I'm sure nobody is surprised to see him this far in the video. But what about Zoro? Why am I assuming Zoro's bounty will increase so high, even over someone like Kid, who shares the same ambition as Luffy? First of all, I'd like to elaborate that multiple people are becoming famous for big accomplishments. Wano Arc is massive, so no single individual is completely dominating the credit. But in my opinion, a lot of evidence suggests that the characters who receive the biggest portion of this credit are Luffy and Zoro. In my opinion, Zoro's narrative importance takes precedence over somebody like Kid. As great as he will be, the Straw Hat Pirates are just destined for a completely different level of greatness. I think a lot of the community forgets just how much notoriety Zoro's ambition requires. I believe Luffy and Zoro will be known as the heroes of Wano Kuni. So first I want to take a look back at the 2 most recent long-running arcs that we've had, what the focus of the arc was, and how the events of the arc were perceived in the eyes of the world government. So first let's start off with the Dressrosa Arc. Dressrosa was Trafalgar Law's arc. Luffy and Law got the most focus in this arc. That heavily revolved around Law's backstory, which revealed his secret alias, the D-Clan, and a secret last name in Water. It helped Law achieve his ambition, which was killing Doflamingo, and even introduced another potential ambition for him to have later, which includes finding the secret of D, like I mentioned earlier. Also ask yourself, how did the world perceive the events of Dressrosa? Characters like Zoro and the Grand Fleet did get a nice bounty raise as well, but it was mostly focused on Law and Luffy. What was reported to the 5 Gorosei members in Akainu? That Law and Luffy took down Doflamingo. Kaido reacted to the news being angry at Law and Luffy. Now let's talk about Whole Cake Island. Whole Cake Island was Sanji's arc, in which Sanji got more focused than he ever did before. Just like Law, it revolved around his backstory, revealing him to be of the Vinsmoke family. We also got more insight on his character, expanding more on why he has his ambition to find the All Blue, and how he came to love cooking so much. He was even given his best cooking feat of the series thus far, which included baking a cake that even had Big Mom satisfied. And how did the world perceive the events of Whole Cake Island? Characters like Beige and Jinbei did receive some credit too, but a lot of it was focused on Luffy and Sanji. Luffy's emergence as the 5th Emperor of the Sea, and Sanji's affiliation with the Vinsmoke family. So for very similar reasons I just mentioned, to Law and Sanji's arc, I believe that everything being set up in Wano is shaping up to be Zoro's arc. Obviously the scale of Wano is huge, and there are so many other plot lines, But when it's all said and done, Zoro is the character who will be given the most focus. Wano is a Japanese-themed arc, and Oda said that Zoro is the Straw Hat who represents Japan. From the very beginning of Wano, Oda seems to be emphasizing the duo of Luffy and Zoro. Act 1 of course starts with these two causing trouble all over the region of Kuri, and they even begin the raid on Onigashima on the front lines together. In the anime, they are the only two characters to have eye catchers as well. They are also the only two characters that have been given training in armament hockey this arc, which seems to be a focus of Wano, the way observation hockey was in Whole Cake Island. So now I'm going to dive into a little more depth on Zoro's plotlines. I think there's a lot of subtle information that people have overlooked when it comes to what exactly Oda is building up for him. There's a lot of evidence I have to look over. So we're going to begin with Lineage. So Lineage is a massive factor in how the world government perceives you. We just talked about this with Sanji and Law, and Luffy's Monkey D lineage has been talked about since damn near the beginning of the whole story. It's honestly pretty ridiculous how many people he's connected to in the Shimotsuki clan of Wano, a formerly powerful and renowned family known for their hardiness. SBS 96, Oda tells us the story of Shimotsuki Kozabaru, the man who forged two of Zoro's swords, Wado Ichimoji and Enma. He left Wano 55 years ago to settle in the East Blue, where he founded a village named Shimotsuki Village, the village Zoro grew up in. He then had a son by the name of Koshiro, who was Zoro's sensei, and then Koshiro had a daughter named Kuina, who was Zoro's former rival. Shimotsuki translates to Frost Moon, so it really makes this scene of Zoro and Kuina fighting even more powerful than it once did. Oda likely has been planning this from the very start of the manga. Shimotsuki is also the old Japanese name for November, the month Zoro was born in. Oda even jokes at the end of this SBS saying, "Could this mean Zoro's lineage?" In the story, Zoro developed a relationship with Shimotsuki Yasui, the former daimyo of Hakume, and was extremely angered by his execution. In Act 2, we were introduced to Shimotsuki Ushimaru, the former daimyo of Ringo, who Kaido made sure did not escape destruction. This man has a very strong resemblance to Zoro, some even speculating him to be his father. At this point, if all these connections didn't amount to anything, it would be pretty disappointing. So now that we talked about his potential heritage, I'd like to move on to what this arc means for Zoro from a combative standpoint, and how important this arc is to achieving his dream, that Zoro can be the right hand who Luffy can trust to any situation. So first and foremost, he wants to be the strongest swordsman in the world. Therefore, a prerequisite of that is overcoming the strongest swordsman Wano has to offer, which is presumably the Calamity King the Wildfire, someone who likely has a bounty around 1.6 billion. I'm not going to go into depth on this one because I actually have an entire video dedicated on this matchup, which I highly suggest you check out if you're not convinced of it. The link will be in the description. But I don't think that's where Zoro's role as a combatant peaks in this arc. I believe so many story elements suggest him having a massive role in the downfall of Kaido. The Shimotsuki member I haven't mentioned yet is probably the most important one as far as importance to Zoro's character, and that's Shimotsuki Ryuma, a legendary samurai of Wano who is known for slaying a dragon, as well as defending Wano multiple times from the outside world. The same samurai who started Oda's one-shot Monsters, a character who shares a similar ambition as Zoro, seeking the pinnacle of strength and swordsmanship. In Monsters, he's introduced as a samurai who had been starved for multiple days, the same way Zoro was in the One Piece manga. Ryuma was also framed for a crime he didn't do, and even asked to commit seppuku, the same way Zoro was at the start of Wano Arc. One Piece Magazine 5 talks about the legend of the Dragon Slayer. In Punk Hazard, Zoro killed a Western dragon, just like Ryuma did. So now that they are in Wano, maybe a new legend of an Eastern dragon will be created. Kaido is the only Eastern dragon in Wano, and would most certainly fit the criteria as the catalyst for somebody to create a legend from. One Piece Magazine 6 talks about how a strong samurai, who people can call the second coming of Ryuma, may have already appeared. Who could that be? Ryuma actually eventually appears in the One Piece manga as a shadow-controlled corpse in the Thriller Bark arc, where Hogback talks about his legend of slaying a flying dragon. Zoro eventually goes on to fight Ryuma and obtain his sword Shusui. Another great samurai Zoro shares similarities with is Kozuki Oden, someone who possesses the charismatic, ambitious, fun-loving side of Luffy, while also being described as a wild beast with incredible swordsmanship, the way Zoro is. Inherited will is a massive theme in One Piece, and for Zoro to inherit Oden's blade Enma, one of the only swords to scar Kaido, really says a lot. The way this all started was when Zoro fought a bridge bandit named Gyakumaru, who stole Shusui from him. It's no coincidence that in the presence of Zoro once again, the legend of Ryuma slaying a dragon over the capital is mentioned. And later in Act 3, we even get a shot of Kaido depicted the same way, flying over the capital under the exact same description. Right after this fight, Zoro saves a woman who just so happens to be Kozuki Hiyori, the daughter of Kozuki Oden, a princess of Wano, who very much fits the description for Oda's very common damsel in distress plotline, which the task is usually given to Luffy, but it says a lot about Zoro's importance that he is the one who met her in the Wano Arc. During his fight with Killer, Hiyori seems shocked by Zoro talking about 3-sword style. 3 swords, with 3 exclamation points and a question mark, almost as if she was looking for somebody like this, almost as if she found the person she's looking for. She instantly revealed her name to Zoro, somebody she had just met, and given the risks of somebody knowing her true identity, I can't think of another reason how she could have gained such assurance. There's a similar scene before this, when Zoro is walking around with Yasui. The people in the town emphasize the importance of 3 swords, as well as asking if it's a joke. I know it's a lot of speculation, but I do think it's possible that part of the Wano prophecy might be around Zoro's 3-sword usage. It would also be a very fitting pattern from the great swordsmen who came before him. Ryuma used 1-sword style, Oden used 2-sword style, and now Zoro uses 3-sword style. At Yasui's execution, we get a speech bubble clear as day on top of Zoro reinforcing how nobody has been able to take Kaido's head for 20 years. In Ringo, Kawamatsu ironically tells Hiyori that you can't give Oden's blade to a samurai from God knows where, when it's very likely they are standing in the region Zoro is from, so we know Zoro inherited Oden's sword, shares his beast-like fighting qualities, and met his daughter Hiyori, but there are actually a lot more similarities between them, such as Hiyori meeting Zoro at the same age that Toki met Oden. Zoro and Oden both saved them from danger and passed out afterward, to which they both respectively were nursed back to health. Hiyori and Toki also both cry and confide in Zoro and Oden, which results in both of them furiously attacking Orochi, only for it to be stopped by the Barrier Nomi and Kuroshiro respectively. So as you can see, the similarities and parallels that Zoro has with these 2 legendary samurai that came before him is undeniable. And what would be the point of all of this if Zoro also didn't make a name for himself in the land of Wano? I believe Zoro will slay Kaido with Oden's sword and live up to the legend as the second coming of Ryuma. Now, I know a lot of you guys are probably wondering, what is Luffy's role if I believe Zoro is slaying Kaido? Well, if we're talking from a logical perspective on power scaling, it makes no sense for any one person to defeat Kaido. Other characters will contribute, including Luffy himself. I just believe that there would be so much thematic weight to Zoro landing this killing blow, which would also greatly serve his ambition and help his name reach the heavens. Feats of notoriety like this aren't just necessary for Luffy's dream, but for Zoro as well. But I think an overlooked aspect of the arc is Big Mom. Luffy's attention does seem to be focused on Kaido, but I think it's important to note that this is the Yonko saga. It's the Wano Arc, so Kaido is the one being fleshed out the way Big Mom was fleshed out in Whole Cake Island. But as far as the saga overall, they are still 2 antagonists of equal standing. They are both Yonko. The last time we had a case like this was in Thriller Bark. We had Moria and Kuma, who were both warlords. Moria had his reputation on the line against Luffy, and was in danger of losing his warlord position. Big Mom also has her reputation on the line against Luffy, after what transpired in the events of Whole Cake Island. Kuma was an honorable man like Zoro, who kept his word with him. Kaido seemed to develop some sense of honor as well after what happened with Oden, being angry at the old hag who interfered with their fight. Kaido also compromised with Oden the same way Kuma and Zoro did, by giving them a damn near impossible task to complete. Kaido is looking for an amazing way to die, and throughout the arc we've been highlighted how a samurai's true worth is in their end. I believe Kaido adopted this philosophy after Oden's death, in which he called spectacular, and would be remembered for many years to come. What better way to die than by the hands of a samurai worthy of inheriting Ryuma and Oden's will? Going back to Big Mom, I think it's safe to say that she wants Luffy's head arguably even more so than Kaido, and that their beef has been built up even longer, ever since Fishman Island. Luffy trained his Ryo in the Udon prison, and even though the purpose of this was to fight Kaido, he did in fact test it out on Big Mom, which I think could be foreshadowing her defeat. It makes sense an attack designated to damage the inside would also be effective on somebody with an abnormal body like Big Mom. One thing I also question is Jinbei, who was in a very tough situation at the end of Whole Cake Island. How did Jinbei escape? Did he really get out unscathed? Were there really no consequences or sacrifices? I think it's very possible Jinbei is putting on an act to make sure morale doesn't lower before the war. Maybe when we eventually confront Big Mom, the truth will come out. Maybe Big Mom actually killed Jinbei's crew. I definitely think it's plausible, and something like this could possibly shift Luffy's attention back to Big Mom. Luffy and Big Mom are both gluttons, the same way Zoro and Kaido are both drunks. And like I mentioned earlier, Kaido's goal is to literally die, and a lot of the foreshadowing suggests it will be by decapitation, which isn't really something Luffy can pull off with his fighting style, nor is it in his nature to kill anyone. So who better can he entrust the task to than his right-hand man? But in Big Mom's case, I think it matches up perfectly. I also think from a storytelling perspective it makes sense. Wano Arc will go well beyond chapter 1000, and for the story to progress at a natural rate, it makes sense for both of these Yonko to be defeated, so we can focus more on Shanks, Blackbeard, and the world government. Not to mention, I think chapter 957 actually foreshadows this. I think it foreshadows the failure of the Big Mom and Kaido alliance. The Navy talks about how, if this team-up does come to fruition, that they would likely surpass the cumulative bounties of Whitebeard and Roger, which I think most would agree would make no sense to happen. I don't think even one of them will be active after this war, because if so, their bounty would be increased higher than what narratively makes sense for them. So in conclusion, Zoro's character will be fleshed out in all aspects. He will defeat the strongest swordsman on Wano, King the Wildfire, and he will ultimately play the biggest role in the downfall of Kaido, which results in him taking his head. And Monkey D. Luffy, our main protagonist, will play the biggest role in defeating Big Mom, while also playing a role in Kaido's defeat. After Wano, just like One Piece Treasure Cruise predicted, Luffy and Zoro will be the heroes of Wano Kuni. I believe Luffy and Zoro will be leaving this arc with a combined bounty of over 5 billion, Roronoa Zoro being worth 2,120,000,000, and Luffy being worth 3 billion. So before I end, I want to share some of my quick calculations and other reasonings for the numbers that I chose. So after the Dressrosa Arc, Zoro received a bounty of 320 million compared to Luffy's 500 million. So Zoro's bounty was about 64% of Luffy's bounty. But Zoro's increase was crazy. He got an increase of 200 million compared to Luffy, who only got an increase of 100 million, even though Luffy was the one who defeated Doflamingo. So why did Zoro get such a high boost despite him not having that major of a role in the arc? So I thought to myself, I can't imagine how crazy the boost would be for the arc that actually revolves around Zoro. So I decided that Zoro's bounty would be 70% of Luffy's after Wano, compared to the 64% it was after Dressrosa. In chapter 957, Shanks' crew was highlighted as having the best balance and having a high average bounty across the board. As we know, the Straw Hats are structured in a very similar way. Great balance, quality over quantity, no true commander system. There isn't an astronomical gap in bounty between the captain and subordinates like there is in Whitebeard, Big Mom, and Kaido's crews. So if I had to guess the bounties of Shanks' crew, it'd be something like this. Shanks has a bounty of 4 billion. So I think Beckman would be around 3 billion, Lucky Roo would be around 2 billion, and Yasop would be around 1 billion. So I used the same logic with the Straw Hats. Since my prediction for Luffy's bounty is 3 billion after Wano, I gave Zoro a bounty close to 2 billion, and I gave Sanji a bounty close to 1 billion. I do eventually think Usopp will be worth over 1 billion one day to match what his dad has, but it's still too early for that. Well, that's going to do it for me, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. Tell me what you think of my predictions and what you would change. Did I wank or underrate some characters? Who do you think will have the biggest roles in this arc, and why? Once again, I appreciate all that check this out. I know One Piece is on break, but there's still plenty to talk about. Make sure you like, subscribe, and have a great rest of your day. Peace out.